What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Michael here with Scott, and welcome to FudgeMuppet. If you've been watching the channel for some time now, you won't need a pair of binoculars to spot that we are super excited for the Elder Scrolls 6. Perhaps you've seen our series 5 Things We Want in Elder Scrolls 6, or you've tuned into one of our many topic discussions like our recent one about bringing the attributes feature back, or maybe you've seen other installments of 4 Things That You Want But We Don't, where we actually discuss the ideas we think are best left out of the next main Elder Scrolls title. This is part 4, but just like the other videos, the parts don't matter, so if it's your first video here, you can still sit back, relax, and enjoy everything we've got to say. These fan desires we're talking about in today's video were found both in the comment sections of our other Elder Scrolls videos, and also as comments on various forums and articles online. We personally think that they're not the best decisions for the ultimate Elder Scrolls 6 experience, however, this is of course all our preference, so feel free to let us know what your opinion is in the comments below. Maybe you'll agree with what we say, maybe you can actually brainstorm a slightly different way to do the same idea, but so that it works much better. Either way, just release your creativity and thoughts and let us know what you think in the comment section. And if you really like these topic discussions, be sure to stop into our YouTube streams to brainstorm with us live. Streams are announced on my Twitter, linked in the description below.
The first thing that many Elder Scrolls fans have expressed a desire for is to have the Elder Scrolls 6 set in a distant, far-off location, such as Atmora or Akavir. Now, chiefly among them, Akavir is the most desired, the most mentioned. But as much as it sounds cool to explore the far-off and mysterious land of the East, I think it would detract from the Elder Scrolls we know and love. Akavir as a foreign force has been an integral part of Tamriel's history. It sets the stage for the rise of the Second Empire under Riemann I, as well as establishing Akaviri military tactics within the newly formed legions, and of course we can't forget the Akaviri Dragon Guard, whose third-era derivative, the Blades, would play integral parts in history to come. You may not think about it much, but without the Akaviri, no Empire as you know it, no Blades, no Dragon Guard, no Alduin's Wall, no cool katanas. All the Elder Scrolls games would be vastly different without the effects of the Akaviri invasions. But personally, I think part of the charm to Akavir is that we don't know much about it. This place that has had such a profound effect on Tamriel's political and cultural landscape is still so mysterious, and we kinda like that. It works wonderfully as a continent that helps give context to Tamriel, makes Tamriel feel less like the only continent on the planet. And Tamriel has so much left to tell as well, with the Aldmeri Dominion still looming. It would be so sad to see the Elder Scrolls series depart the continent entirely, because all of a sudden Tamriel's extensive history, cultures, and so on would become so much less relevant. For example, the lore of Orsinium is pretty inconsequential when you're roaming around Akavir. It doesn't really feel worth learning about by comparison to all of the Akaviri stuff that would be at the forefront. Now, these reasons are mostly preferential for us. It's what we don't want because we want to stay in Tamriel, but an Elder Scrolls 6 set in Akavir also has some very practical challenges. For starters, I assume Akavir would be huge, simply gauged by the diversity of races and nations. The Kamal of the Frozen Lands, the Tangmo inhabiting the Thousand Monkey Isles, as well as the Sayesi and the Kapotan. So in all likelihood, setting Elder Scrolls 6 in Akavir would mean picking a specific, more manageable sized region of Akavir, and considering most of the nations are sworn enemies, it makes it harder to pick a place where you have exposure to all the races, and you get to see all the awesome stuff Akavir would have to show off. And I would assume there would have to be some workshopping with how Tamriel's races get there, like another Uriel the Fifth style invasion of Akavir making a settlement, or maybe you're a lone traveler on a merchant ship from Ezrionet or something. I also don't think we need more races either, and I don't think the Akaviri ones work too well, considering that the Kamal feel like this mythological army that thaws out every now and then to attack the Tangmo, and then you have the Sayesi with their snake tails instead of legs. Overall, I can just think up of too many complications with Akavir as a setting, and the workarounds often feel rather contrived, and all of this is at the cost of furthering the story in Tamriel, the place we already know and love and have invested so much time into.
The next idea on our list is the idea of drastically expanding all of the mount options in Elder Scrolls 6, and I can understand where this desire comes from. Different mounts are cool, and in Skyrim, if you don't count riding dragons due to your lack of control when it comes to moving them, then there were only the different horses as options, with unique ones like Arvak and Shadowmere as well. Elder Scrolls 6 won't be taking place in Skyrim, at least we can hope it won't as much as it fits the current meme, so if there are new mount types, it it could make sense. In Hammerfell it fits to have camels you can use in the desert as well as horses, and in Elsewhere it could make sense to be able to ride the Sench battle cats, an act which already exists in the lore. So what's the issue then, Michael? Well, I may not be against small additions to mounts, but I do not want the heavy expansion of them to the point where there's a giant list of over-the-top options and it just feels silly. Some Elder Scrolls fans would love to walk up to some stables on the plains of the Alakir Desert and find a Daedric armored sabercat next to a Gwar, next to a dwarven spider mount, next to a Storm Atronach horse. I am not one of these fans. Elder Scrolls Online has a bunch of different mounts on offer, and in an MMO where the world building is taken slightly less seriously compared to the single player games, they mostly exist for players to have fun unlocking them, showing them off, and in the case of a game with microtransactions, existing as a cosmetic piece you can purchase with real money. Obviously they come up with some lore justifications, but they're pretty weak, and some are actually contradictory to previously established lore. Even some of the most basic mounts, like an Ice Wolf from Skyrim, get given new lore to make them a mount, and it feels a bit forced. If Ice Wolves can grow to a tremendous size, and if the Nords of Hjolmarch struggled to domesticate them, but eventually succeeded and turned them into mounts, why did I not see this or even hear it talked about in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim? But even that's just one example, and it's not even the main problem area, because at least it's somewhat grounded in the realms of reality. What is a problem, for me at least, is when people go overkill and they want the option to ride a giant great elk, a wild hunt camel, a Storm Atronach Gwar, a Hearthfire Kagouti, and a dwarven bear. It just feels a bit silly, and again, this one is really just our preference. If you can see it, you can ride it, isn't really a vibe I want the game to have. Modders will likely make a variety of over-the-top options anyway for those who really want to muck around with mounts in Elder Scrolls 6, but I personally would much rather the developers focus such cosmetic effort on designing unique enemies to fight in the game, or just adding new true unique weapon and armor pieces that you can discover and have various uses for. Also, with really unique mounts, such as riding a giant frostbite spider or something ridiculous like that, it creates the need for even more effort and consideration when it comes to terrain pathing and mount accessibility. I'm all for improving the current mounts too and adding diversity to things like horses. In Oblivion, you had some horses like the White Horse built with high health points designed to be sturdy, and other more frail horses designed for speed. Doing this is fine if you had a few types of horses that differed statistically, plus one or two other mounts that are very lore friendly to the province the game is set in, some uniquely named ones, plus one, maybe two magical kinds of mounts like something you can conjure, similar in vibe to Arvak. I think that's plenty. And if you had some basic armors for them, that's fine too. In a nutshell, we actually agree on the concept of improving mounts, but we want to do so by adding variety and specialization to the animals that already exist, and by adding a very small amount of new options if it makes sense within the lore. But we'd prefer to avoid a huge list of over-the-top options that look cool on the surface, but end up being unnecessary, overly flamboyant, and create the need for convoluted lore rationalizations.
Next thing that many of you want but we don't is having a family. In Elder Scrolls, of course. Now, I'm all for the Hearthfire style kid adoption and wife thing, that all makes sense. And at first thought it sounds kinda cool to marry someone and have a biological kid with them and have them grow up. But remember guys, this isn't The Sims, this isn't Fable, and there's a lot of complications with biological children, and it's a big opportunity cost of development time. You have to ask yourself, would you rather have 10 more great side quests that flesh out the world more, or would you rather be able to have kids with your wife and all of these family features that support this? Personally, we would much rather have more side quests. Hell, we'd even rather have 30% more weapons and armor. When thinking about the Elder Scrolls 6, you gotta consider what is core to the experience of the Elder Scrolls. I'd say being who you want to be in a rich open world, doing quests, exploring, training skills, getting cool items, and becoming more powerful. Having biological children with your wife or husband doesn't greatly contribute to the main Elder Scrolls experience. But let's talk about the actual practical problems of this. Say you're a female character and you get pregnant. Are you going to have to play 9 months of in-game time as a pregnant lady with active effects such as sore feet, slower combat, and morning sickness? It sounds kind of ridiculous. And then you got to give birth and then play 3 years of in-game time to even have a 3-year-old. The character I had a ridiculous number of hours in was at the year 203 of the 4th era. So if I had a child straight out of Helgen, I'd have a 2-year-old after all those hours. And how am I gonna breastfeed this kid while slaying dragons? Sure, leave it with a wet nurse, but come on, you can see how this is getting complicated. On the other hand, you may say, well, let's just have a time skip so you can have an older kid. But then you have to consider all that happens politically in that time, as well as all the characters aging up, and if they don't, it just kind of feels silly. You could say just use magic to make them grow up, but come on, we're kind of grasping at straws here. And on top of all this, you have to consider the racial phylogeny book, which states the race is the same of the mother, which then conflicts with the creation of Bretons and various other characters of history. Honestly, it's just an area I think that is best left untouched, and like I said before, it doesn't add to the core experience of an Elder Scrolls game. Hell, maybe someone could make a mod for Sims 4, an Elder Scrolls overhaul. That would satisfy that feel better. Or if you want some dynasty descended from your own character in Elder Scrolls, play the Crusader Kings 2 mod, Elder Kings, which is set in Tamriel. That's good fun. But overall, we are still down for what Skyrim had, the spouse, house, and adopted kid, but there are just too many logistical issues with biological children.
The final topic on our list is a very interesting one, and that is the return of the Dwemer in Elder Scrolls 6. Many Skyrim fans, ourselves included, loved exploring the various Dwemer ruins in Skyrim, soaking in what remained of their highly advanced society, the architecture, their special magic-like tools and devices, the various mechanical, magical, and engineering feats. It was all very impressive to see, and we love learning more about this mysterious race. In Elder Scrolls 6, we'd love to learn more about the Dwemer, but we've come to really think that a large part about what makes the Dwemer so cool is the mystery itself, which surrounds their disappearance and their abilities. Now don't get me wrong, getting some more clues about the disappearance of the Dwemer would be really awesome. We can all agree on this. But where our views diverge with some is with the whole idea of Elder Scrolls 6 being the game that features the Dwemer race full-on returning to Tamriel in the flesh en masse, as neat as it might sound. This ancient race of elves disappeared at the Battle of Red Mountain, and they haven't been seen since. Although that wizard in Morthal named Phaleon claims to have traveled through different Oblivion planes, meeting Daedra and Dwemer and everything in between. But whether or not he's telling the truth, whether it was just one Dwemer who at one time went to an Oblivion plane, or if the entire race went and created their own paradise somewhere, we do not know. There's also the theory that the Dwemer zero-summed and disappeared without a trace, effectively removing any possibility of their return. In fact, there's a lot of theories about where the Dwemer went, which are all quite enticing. But that's the thing, with the Dwemer returning, you ruin the mystery completely. This intrigue, the very thing that makes the Dwemer so cool, that they're this ancient race, shrouded in secrecy, and no one knows exactly what happened to them, completely disappears. All the things that feel so ancient, the lexicons, their tonal architecture powers, all of it would probably feel a lot more contemporary and less like these relics of a powerful but lost society of long ago. The other thing about the Dwemer returning is the logistics of it all. Where do they return to? What do they do? And how does Tamriel react? It would be such a huge event, and I feel like it would need most of the main story in terms of content and length to properly explore it all. It could be pretty fun, but amongst the internal tensions within the province or provinces the next game is set in, plus uncovering or furthering some sort of resolution with the Thalmor and what ends up happening with them, plus whatever big crisis hits Tamriel in the next game, assuming it's not a Dwemer crisis, I just feel like there's too much going on to explore a Dwemer return in full without it becoming the main focus. So in a sense, we're also looking at it from an opportunity cost perspective, as we'd much rather the game have its main focus on many other things before we'd choose the Dwemer. If all the Dwemer didn't zero sum, and we do meet some of them somewhere in a pocket realm of Oblivion in a certain quest, that could be okay, because it doesn't necessarily reveal where the main group of them went, nor does it force an entire race to pop back into Tamriel amidst already existing chaos and tensions and take the focus off other things. It would simply serve as more exploration of the race, which we're definitely still all for. Now look, if the next Elder Scrolls 6 trailer comes out and it's revealed that the Dwemer will be returning, I'm still going to be extremely excited for the game. It wouldn't be awful, but based on the reasons I've discussed, which of course are definitely subjective, and it's just our personal preference, I'm sure you can see why we'd love to explore them just a little bit more, but retain their mystery by just eating another slice of the cake and not the whole thing.
And that brings us to the end of another Elder Scrolls 6 discussion, going through 4 things we've seen desired by fans who honestly want the next Elder Scrolls game to be as awesome as we do, that we personally wouldn't want in the game. As always with these videos, it is subjective and many of the ideas come down to personal preference, so be sure to let us know everything you've got to say on the topics in the comments section. Would you also prefer that these ideas aren't in the next main title, or do you really just want them in there no matter what? Whatever you thought, we hope you enjoyed listening to what we had to say, and we're super thankful if you've watched the video all the way through. If you want to reach us on social media, Twitter is the best way and it's linked below. Remember, we'll also announce streams from there, so if you're keen to come stop by on a live stream and talk about your ideas with us, you won't want to miss it. Thank you again so much for supporting the channel. This was Scott and Michael. We look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.